Hello everyone, Darren Alff here from BicycleTouringPro.com. We are live here on the Bicycle Touring Pro YouTube channel. I am just going to check to make sure we are live on my phone. Should be going live here any second. Yep. So I've started the webinar just a few minutes early. I'm going to wait about 3 more minutes until 1 o'clock here in Southern California, then we'll begin. Can you guys see and hear me okay? I know the webcam that I'm using is not very good, so I'm probably like a little blown out on the camera, but hopefully you can see me okay. And I'm more concerned that you can hear me. Can you hear me okay? I'm looking at your comments on my phone. Yeah, it looks good. Okay. My computer that I'm broadcasting from is from 2013. And the webcam is old, and the fan inside the computer is so loud and so noisy. So I'm hoping that you can't hear the fan too much. But okay, it looks like you guys can see and hear me okay, which is good. I see some familiar names here in the chat. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Okay. Like I said, we'll begin here in just a moment. I just kind of turned this on a little bit early just to make sure that everything was working, and just to let you guys know that we will be starting in just a minute. So I know that you guys are watching from like all around the world. Some of you are here in California where I am. Some of you are on the other side of the United States, and some of you are on the other side of the world. Some people said it was going to be 10, 11 o'clock at night when they were watching this, and that they were going to stay up just to watch the webinar. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I'm just looking at the comments here on my phone. Everyone's saying all good from France. Hello, Sao Paulo, Brazil. You from Brazil, that's cool. Sweden, Jacob in Sweden. Uh-oh. Couple of people saying there's an echo, or one person saying there's an echo, and then it's gone. You guys can hear me okay? It's all right? Someone's asking about my kickstand. I'll answer that in just a moment. Remind me about the kickstand question in just a minute. Like I said, I just want to wait like 1 more minute until we begin, just to let people come on and so they know that we're going to be starting. Then I'll kind of do a quick introduction, and then we'll begin the Q&A. So just 1 moment. I'm just kind of reading through your comments to make sure you can see and hear me okay. Sounds fine. Okay, cool. All right. So it's 1 o'clock here in Southern California. I think we will begin right on time. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Darren Alff, and I am the Bicycle Touring Pro. Since 2001, I have been riding my bicycle around the world. I've ridden through, I don't know, about 75 different countries, something like that on the bicycle, in North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and in Europe. And since 2007, I've been running the website at BicycleTouringPro.com with the aim of teaching other people how to conduct their own bicycle touring adventures. And since that time, I have written about 1,200 free articles, which are up on my website about Bicycle Touring Pro at BicycleTouringPro.com. All of those articles are about bicycle touring, camping, bike packing, world travel, that sort of thing. I've also written several books. These are my most popular books, which is The Essential Guide to Touring Bicycles over here, and The Bicycle Touring Blueprint over here. These are the 2 books that people are using to plan and prepare for their own bicycle touring adventures. So I've got books. I have 2 video courses that are designed to teach you how to conduct your own bicycle touring adventures and how to find the best touring bicycle for you. And I also run the YouTube channel here on Bicycle Touring Pro YouTube channel, where I do live videos like this every once in a while, but I mostly do like travel videos from my own bicycle touring adventures, as well as how-to videos where I teach you tips and tricks and things to know so that you can go off and conduct your own bicycle touring adventures. So that's just a little bit about who I am and what I do. And before we begin, I was just mentioning my books here. This is my book, The Bicycle Touring Blueprint, and this is my most popular book. But I am always asked when I'm out on the road if people can order a signed copy of the book from me. And the problem is I'm usually out on the road and traveling around the world, and I'm not carrying like hundreds of these books on my bicycle and shipping them out myself. I have somebody here in California that mails all of the books for me whenever I get an order. But right now I'm back home in Southern California. And so if you are one of those people who's written to me recently and you want a signed copy of my book, I am mailing out signed copies of my book today and today only, because today is essentially the last day that I'm going to be here in Southern California. I'm going to be hitting the road again soon, and I won't be able to sign any more copies of my books and mail them out personally. So if you want a signed copy of my book, you got to order it today, and you can get it at bicycletouringpro.com/book or at biketourbook.com. And just to like give you a little incentive to order the book today, I've created a coupon code. The coupon code is signed, as in I want my book signed. So what you got to do is you got to go to biketourbook.com, enter the coupon code signed, and you'll get a signed copy of my book in the mail, as well as receive $5 off the normal cost of the book. I know a lot of you have already ordered this book, but if you're one of those people who hasn't, and you would like a signed copy of my paperback book, that's me on the back cover there, just go to biketourbook.com today and enter the coupon code signed. I've also placed a link to that page where you can order the book in the video description down below. So please just, it's the second link in the video description down below. Hit that link, order the book today only. Like I said, I'm going to be hitting the road soon, and I won't be able to sign any more books after today. So there you go. What else? A couple other quick announcements before we begin the Q&A. I am going to be hitting the road soon because I'm going to Virginia for a big bicycle touring event called Bike Virginia. It's a week-long bicycle touring party, basically, where 1,500, 1,600 people from all across the United States and even around the world come together in the state of Virginia, and we go off on what is essentially like day rides around the Shenandoah Valley in Western Virginia, kind of like, yeah, not West Virginia, but Western Virginia. So I have signed up for this event this year. I'm going to be there for the entire week, which is like June 21st to the 27th, I believe. And I know that many of you are going to be there. A lot of you have already written to me and said, hey, I'm going to be at Bike Virginia too. Can we go on a bike ride? That sort of a thing. And yes, I would love that. So if you are going to be at Bike Virginia this year, I am going to be there for the entire thing, but I'm also hosting a special event on Friday, June 21st, which is the very first day of the bike tour. So Friday, June 21st at 7 p.m., I will be at the hospitality tent, and I will be doing like a meet and greet. So if you're at Bike Virginia this year, come to the hospitality tent at 7 p.m. on Friday, June 21st. Say hi to me then. I'll get your name and contact info, and we can sort out a time to ride together during the week. Hopefully we can do like a big Bicycle Touring Pro group ride or something where all of us Bicycle Touring Pro readers can ride together during Bike Virginia. Like I said, there's going to be about 1,500, 1,600 people there. So it's going to be crazy. So it might be kind of hard to find each other. So to find me at Bike Virginia on June 21st, just go to the hospitality tent at 7 p.m. Now, that is just one of the upcoming bicycle tours that you can join me on in the future. I'm going to be at Bike Virginia in June. Then I'm going to, my cousin is calling me on the phone. Not a good time, Casey. Then I'm going to Portugal in September, and I'm going to be participating in another bike tour with Top Bike Tours Portugal. It's the same company that I went bicycle touring with in Portugal back in, I think it was 2018, last year. Yeah, same company as then. So if you enjoyed my previous bike tour in Portugal, you should consider signing up for the bike tour this coming September in Portugal. There are already, last I heard, about 9 other Bicycle Touring Pro readers who have signed up for the tour. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then in January of 2020, I'm going to be doing a bike tour in New Zealand. And this is another bike tour that I'm really looking forward to. And several other Bicycle Touring Pro readers have already signed up to participate in as well. So if you are interested in joining me in Virginia, Portugal, or New Zealand, go to my website at bicycletouringpro.com/calendar. You can see all of the details on each of these 3 bike tours. And I'm adding new bike tours all the time. So if I have other events that you can join me on, I will be adding them to that page at bicycletouringpro.com/calendar. Okay, those are all the announcements that I have to make. Today, I really wanted to spend the vast majority of my time answering your guys' questions about bicycle touring, bike packing, world travel. My cousin Casey is calling me again. Maybe he sees that I posted on Facebook that I was doing live or something. So maybe he's calling me and wants to be on the video. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, so I wanted to basically spend this time answering your guys' questions. And I get questions on a daily basis. I get like 100 emails a day from people all around the world who have some kind of question about bicycle touring or world travel or bike packing or whatever. So I am oftentimes unable to answer all of those questions as they come in. Like, it's just way too overwhelming for me. I do everything at Bicycle Touring Pro by myself. And so like I'm writing the articles, sending out the emails, writing these books, creating the video courses, I've made like 500, 600 videos on the Bicycle Touring Pro YouTube channel. I do everything by myself. So answering 100 emails per day is just really, really hard for me to do on top of everything else that I'm already doing and traveling and stuff on top of that. So I like to, when I can, do these live Q&As because it gives me an opportunity to answer a whole bunch of questions in a short amount of time. And I can usually answer the questions maybe better than I could in a short email. The other thing that I should mention is, like, almost every time I do one of these Q&A things, the answers to my questions, the answers to the questions that I'm receiving in the live Q&A are 99% of the time in my book. So a lot of the questions I receive are in this book. So if you haven't read this book and you have a question about bike touring, you should really pick this up because this is the book. Now the phone's ringing in the background. This is the book that you should read if you want to learn how to conduct your own bicycle touring adventures. Like I said, I put this together to answer your questions about bicycle touring. My other book, The Essential Guide to Touring Bicycles, was written to help you find the best touring bicycle for you. So if you're shopping for a new touring bike, this is the one you should read. And if you're planning your own bicycle tours where you're going to go off and conduct your own cycling adventures, then this is the book that you want to read. This is like the how-to book, whereas this is really just a buyer's guide for people who are new to touring bicycles. Okay, so I'm going to just look at my phone here and answer your any of the questions that I receive in no particular order. I did also receive a few questions that were sent to me in advance of this webinar. I made an announcement that I'd be doing this live Q&A, so some people sent me questions in advance, and I'll be answering those questions as well. I'll just look through here and see if there's anyone, any questions. Andrew says, will you ship the book to the UK? Yeah, Andrew, I ship the Bicycle Touring Blueprint all over the world. So no matter what country you're in, pretty much, I can get you a book. No problem. Just go to biketourbook.com, click on the paperback, and like I said, enter that coupon code SIGNED to get $5 off. And I'll sign it for you and ship it out today. A lot of people saying where they are in the world. Okay, so one person was asking about the kickstand and saying, Darren, why don't you use a kickstand? Well, the answer is sometimes I do use a kickstand, actually. You may have seen me using a kickstand on my latest Colorado videos. But in most of my videos and on most of my bicycle tours that I've done in the past, I have not used a kickstand. And the reason I haven't used a kickstand is because I'm oftentimes looking for any opportunity to cut the weight from my bicycle. So that's one of the things that I talk about inside the Bicycle Touring Blueprint, is the fact that you need to look at everything that you're bringing with you on your bicycle tour and figure out if there's any way to reduce the weight of that item. For example, I'm just going to like give you a really kind of quirky example, but like this jacket that I'm wearing right now, for example, what I do when I'm preparing for my bicycle tours is I go through each and every item that I have and I look for things on that item that are unnecessary. So for example, I just bought a new backpack, and with the backpack came a shoulder strap, but I never use like an over the shoulder strap. Like I've never used it. I always just use the hand grip or something, or the actual backpack straps. I never use a shoulder strap. So right away, I just ripped that shoulder strap off and threw it in the trash. And that's like one less thing that I have to carry now with that backpack. And so like this jacket, for example, if I was just looking at this jacket and saying, oh, maybe I'll bring this jacket with me on my trip, I would look at this and go, oh, wait a second, like this jacket has this little cloth thing on it attached to the zipper. I don't really need this cloth thing in addition to the zipper. And so I might cut this little piece of cloth off in order to save this tiny little bit of weight from this little thing right here. Now that seems kind of ridiculous, but if you do that with like all of the items that you are carrying with you, you will oftentimes find that you have a small pile of little tiny things like this that you have cut and removed from your items. You can oftentimes save like a pound or two of stuff just by removing the parts of items that you don't need. That's like one really kind of weird example and something that I talk about inside the Bicycle Touring Blueprint. But I'm always looking for ways to save weight and space when I'm packing for my bicycle tours, and that's just one of the ways that I do it. The other way that I do it is to get rid of things like a kickstand that I don't necessarily need. A kickstand is certainly nice if you're parking your bicycle. It makes parking your bike a whole lot easier, but it's really not a necessity to bicycle touring or cycling in general. And so that's why in the past, I have not used a kickstand, and I've chosen to maybe carry other things on my bicycle instead. I've said this before, but like I, as the Bicycle Touring Pro, devote a lot of time on my bicycle touring trips to photography and shooting videos and stuff like that. And so I have chosen to carry more heavy camera equipment instead of luxury items like a kickstand. So that's basically the answer to that particular question, if that makes sense. I got a question in advance from a guy named Dang Yang, maybe from China or something, I'm not sure. But he says, I am very new to touring and was wondering if you recommend clipless pedals and shoes or flat pedals when touring. I hear varying opinions, but I'd be most certainly interested in hearing your thoughts on the matter. So yeah, this is a common question that I get, and it's something that I talk about inside my book, The Essential Guide to Touring Bicycles, because when you're putting your touring bicycle together, one of the things that you have to think about are the pedals and the shoes that you'll be using on your bicycle. Now, most touring bicycles don't come with pedals of any kind, and that's because touring bike manufacturers know that the pedals that you use is kind of a personal choice. Some people might want flat pedals, some people might want SPD pedals, and there are other types of pedals out there that you could use as well. But in the bicycle touring world and the bike packing world, there are generally two types of pedals that are used. There are flat pedals, which is just like a platform. They're also called platform pedals sometimes, but it's just a platform that you put your foot on top of and push down on as you pedal. Then there are other types of pedals called SPD pedals, or called clipless pedals. And this is a pedal that looks more like this kind of, and on the bottom of your shoe is a small metal clip. And this metal clip snaps into the pedal on your bicycle. And this way your foot is attached better to the pedal. And as you pedal, you can push not only down like you would with a flat pedal or a platform pedal, but you can also pull up. And so SPD pedals give you a bit more power on your bicycle. They also lock your foot to the pedal, so you're more secure on the bike. Your foot's not going to slip off the pedal as you're going downhill or something and cause you to get in an accident. And so I usually recommend people to try cycling with SPD pedals, especially if they've never done it before. because SPD pedals are generally a superior pedal than something like the flat pedal or the platform pedal. But one of the things about bicycle touring that makes it unique is that a lot of people who are traveling by bicycle spend just as much time traveling off of their bicycle as they do on the bicycle. And in that particular case, you may be better suited by using a flat pedal or a platform pedal, because with a flat pedal or platform pedal, you can wear a shoe like this, just like a regular tennis shoe or something, and you don't have to have a special pair of cycling shoes. And so you can ride your bike in relative comfort wearing a regular pair of shoes, and then as soon as you step off of your bicycle, you have a regular pair of shoes on your feet that you can walk around in comfortably. But if you're planning to spend your bicycle tour mostly cycling, then you may want to lean towards a pair of SPD pedals that will allow you to clip in to your bicycle. So on my early bicycle tours, when I was just getting started out, like my first 2 years of bicycle touring, I used a pair of flat pedals, and I added these toe clips to the pedals. So toe clips are like a little plastic or metal cage. So like this is the pedal kind of, and these toe clips come over the front of the pedal like this. And so you can slide just a regular shoe inside the pedal, inside the front of the toe clip. And this allows you to have a little bit more power when you're pedaling your bicycle. Your foot's locked into the pedal just a little bit more than it would be with a plain platform pedal or flat pedal. So that's what I did on my first 2 bike tours, I think. And then when I started to get really serious about bicycle touring, that's when I switched to SPD pedals. And I've basically been using SPD pedals ever since. Although I have gone on a couple trips, like in 2017, I went to Sweden, Finland, and Norway, and I spent about a month on the road. And on that particular trip, I knew it was going to be really cold, and I knew that I was going to be doing a lot of like off the bike adventures. And so on that particular trip, I used a pair of just like hiking shoes, like low heel, hiking shoes that look more like tennis shoes. And that worked out fine. So every bike tour is different, and I don't want to give one answer that is like, you should be using SPD pedals every single time, because that's simply not the case. And that's another thing that I talk about. It's like the very first chapter that I talk about inside the Bicycle Touring Blueprint. I think it's called There Are No Rules with Bicycle Touring. Yeah, something like that. I'm trying to find it. But anyways, yeah, here it is. This is the chapter. It says, breaking all the rules, or what makes this book different from all the others. And in this chapter, I talk about how bicycle touring is kind of unique because there's not just one way to do it. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. And the choices that you make, like which pair of shoes you should be riding with, depends on the type of bicycle touring that you're going to be doing and your overall goals for the trip. So anyways, I hope that answers your question about shoes. Let's go back to the chat now and see what else you guys are asking. Mid Easy says, what are you doing right now in LA when you're not bike touring? Well, I just got back from a 5.5 month long trip through Europe. I was in Poland, Ukraine, Germany, France, and Spain. So I wasn't doing a whole lot of cycling while I was there, although I was doing some cycling. But the main thing I was doing while I was there was I was putting the finishing touches on my new video course all about touring bicycles. And it's up on my website now. Many of you have already signed up for the course. It's a 14-part video course that's designed to teach people who are new to bicycle touring that are shopping for their first touring bicycle what to look for. So that's what I was working on like all winter long. I did that. Then I went on a bike tour in France, which if you were following me on Instagram or Facebook, you probably saw the photos from my very luxurious bike tour in France. And then after that bike trip was over, I rode my bike from France to Spain just on my own and was camping in my tent and that sort of thing. So now that I'm in California, I am working on some videos from those trips, and I'll be posting them soon here on the Bicycle Touring Pro YouTube channel. And I'm also getting ready, like I said, to leave on my upcoming adventure. I'm actually going to be driving from here in Southern California to Virginia on the other side of the country. So I'm putting 2 of my bicycles in my van, and driving all the way to Virginia. And once I get to Virginia, I'm going to do the Bike Virginia tour. And then I'm planning to stay on the East Coast of the United States with my van and with my bikes, and doing some mini bike tours over there on the East Coast of the United States, because it's been almost 15 years since I've been to the East Coast of the United States and done any bicycle touring over there. And back in 2003, I rode my bike from North Carolina to Maine. And it was a really great trip, but I haven't been there since. And during that trip back in 2003, I wasn't shooting video. I barely took any photos on that trip. In fact, 2003 was the first trip that I ever did that I had a digital camera with me. My first 2 bike tours, I had film cameras, 35 millimeter film cameras that I was shooting with. So I usually, like my first 2 trips, I think I had 1 or 2 rolls of film for the entire bike tour. And then in 2003, I got this digital camera, which was like amazing technology at the time, which today is a complete piece of junk. And the camera that I had, I think it was a Sony, if I remember correctly, but it could only take about 12 photos on like a little, probably like a 2 megabyte SD card or something like that I had. And at the time, I thought that was amazing. Like, I can take 12 photos on this thing. And then whenever I got through those 12 photos, I'd have to get to a computer. Like, I would go to the library and email those 12 photos home, or email them back to myself, essentially. And then I could clear the card and take 12 more photos. And that's so crazy to think about, because now I have like an SD card that has, I don't know, 128 gigabytes on it, and I can take thousands of photos and videos on just this one little card. Totally crazy. So, hey, Bruin, thank you so much. Some gas money for your drive to Virginia. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, it's going to cost a lot to get to Virginia, but I wouldn't go in my van if I weren't planning to spend the whole summer on the East Coast of the United States. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Bike Virginia, spend a week biking around there, then drive. I think I'm going to go up to like New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, that sort of area. Maybe upstate New York, and do some bike tours in there. And then I'm also going to go up into Canada a little bit and do some exploring there. So I'm going to have the van, but I'm going to park the van somewhere and then go off on like a week-long trip and then come back to the van. So that's what I'll be doing for the next couple months. And I think it'll be good. I'm looking forward to seeing that part of the country again, and also sharing some of my adventures with you guys as well here on the Bicycle Touring Pro YouTube channel. In regards to my trip across the United States, if you live in the US and you would not mind hosting me for like one night maybe, or 2 even, I am going to be driving from California to Virginia, and I'm looking for a place to take a shower. I don't have a shower in my van. So if you want to host me for like an evening and let me come inside and use your shower, I would really appreciate it. Send me an email, contact@bicycletouringpro.com. Just let me know where you live in the world. Maybe, tell me your email or phone number or something. And I have a map on my computer that I kind of plot out everybody that contacts me and says, hey, Darren, if you're ever in, wherever, Portland, Maine or something, you got a free place to stay. So I have a map on my computer of all these people that have offered me free places to stay. And if you're one of those people who wouldn't mind hosting me for a night and letting me take a shower at your house, please get in touch. I would really appreciate that. Okay, let's see. What other questions do you have? David Johnson says, good day, Darren, from Sydney. That was the worst accent ever. From Sydney, Australia. When are you coming over to the land down under? Yeah, so in 2020, January 2020, I am going to New Zealand, and I am very highly considering hopping over the 6-hour flight or whatever it is to Australia and doing some bike touring there. I haven't booked a flight yet, but this is something I am very seriously considering. So which part of Australia should I go to? I think that's the thing that's holding me back from Australia more than anything, is like, I know that Australia is a very big country, and I don't necessarily want to bike across the entire thing. So I just want to go and see the best part of Australia, or some of the best parts of Australia. But I'm not really personally interested in like biking all the way around Australia or something like that. So let me know, where should I go? I was thinking of going to Adelaide because my friend Kevin, who many of you have seen in my bicycle touring videos here on the Bicycle Touring Pro YouTube channel, is from Adelaide, Australia. I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll go there. I do another trip with Kevin for a week or two, and then maybe I go home. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, if you have any suggestions, let me know. Okay, I'm looking at other questions. Spartans 48823 says, is there a good company you'd suggest for a last-minute tour that doesn't cost $1 million, but good quality of tour? Got unexpected time off, but only 2 weeks to decide where to go. Oh man, yeah, so that's a good question. So you're looking for a tour company that offers a bicycle tour that's not crazy expensive. There are a bunch actually, and I have participated in like 20 different guided or self-guided bicycle tours all around the world, and I've reviewed all of them on my website at bicycletouringpro.com. If you go to the homepage right now and just scroll down, I just clicked on the wrong button on my computer, but scroll down, there's a thing on the right-hand side, I believe it says guided bike tours. Click on that, and then right there on that page, you will see all of the tours that I have reviewed. Now, there are several on that page that cost a lot of money, but there are also several on that page that don't cost very much at all. And so the ones that don't cost a whole lot that are coming to my mind, Portugal is a good place to go. Estonia, Latvia is a good place to go. Where else? Oh, shoot, I've done so many. South Africa is a really good place to go. So it depends on where you are thinking of going. And there are probably some here in the United States that are relatively inexpensive as well. Shoot, hold on, I misclicked it. Now I've got the wrong screen open. Okay, there you are. Anyways, yeah, so those are my thoughts. But yeah, definitely check out that page and check out some of the reviews that I've done, because I have gone with all of those companies that are on that page on my website. And some of the tours, at least, I have videos, so you can kind of see what you're getting into and that sort of a thing. Hey, Marco, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay, another question that was sent to me in advance. This is from Bombi in the Philippines. He says, how do you know that you're physically ready before you do a long distance bike tour? So once again, this is something that I talk about in great detail inside the Bicycle Touring Blueprint. But one of the things that I suggest that you do before you go off and conduct a long distance bike tour is that you conduct several short bike tours first. So that's what I did when I first started bicycle touring. Is I grew up here in Southern California, and I would ride from my parents' house. I was 17, 18 years old when I first started bike touring. So I would ride from my parents' house about 20, 25 miles down the beach to the beach, and then camp at one of the nearby campsites overnight. And then the following day, I would bike back to my parents' house. So it was a mini 2-day, 1-night bicycle tour. And I would do this like over and over and over again. I would sometimes even do it on a weekday when I had school. So I would like bike down to the beach over, after I got off of school, stay there overnight by myself. And then the following morning before school started, I would ride back to school and then go straight to class. And so that's how I trained for my initial bike tours, is just doing that several times. And once I had done that a few times, then I got my parents to drive me up the coast about 75 miles, maybe 100 miles or so, up the coast. And my mom would like drop me there with my bicycle and all my stuff. And then I would spend like 2 or 3 days biking back home. And so I graduated from like a 2-day, 1-night bike trip, just going to the campground and back, to then doing like a 3-day, 2-night bike tour with my mom's assistance, where she would drive me up and then I would simply cycle home. And so I did that several times before I ever went off and did like a long month-long or 2-month-long or 3-month-long or a year-long bicycle trip. And that's how I trained for my bicycle tours. The good thing of the reason this works so well is because when you're close to home, if something were to go wrong, you can always bail. You know, like if you realize after several hours that you've just got way too much stuff and your bike is way too heavy and you're never going to make it to the campsite, you can always just like turn around and go home and then reassess everything that you have with you. So that's what I encourage everyone to do, is like before you go off and like start, like I hear about people that they're like, I'm going to bike around the world, but I've never ridden a bike before. I don't think that's necessarily like a good way to approach bicycle touring. I think it's kind of a recipe for disaster. So that is why I recommend you start off small, maybe just doing a 2-day, 1-night overnight bike tour, and then slowly going up from there, maybe doing 3 days, 2 nights, and then doing like 5 days, 4 nights, and then do a longer bicycle tour after that. So that's what I would recommend. But as far as like going to the gym and that sort of thing, that's usually not something that I recommend for everybody. If you're totally out of shape, I think any sort of exercise is going to be good for you. But the best way to physically train for a bicycle tour is to actually ride your bike. And that's what I recommend most people do, is just get out there and ride your bike as much as you possibly can. Another question that was sent to me in advance came from Sergio in Brazil, and he was asking, how do you compare steel with titanium? So again, this is a question that I answer inside my book, The Essential Guide to Touring Bicycles. I also talk about this inside my video course. My video course is called My First Touring Bicycle, and I have a whole video in there about this one question, but I'll try to answer this very quickly, and that is, most touring bicycles that you see in the world today are made out of steel. And that's because steel is relatively affordable. It has some qualities that make it ideal for bicycle touring. Steel is somewhat flexible, so it's not like totally rigid, like aluminum is very rigid. And that's why steel is used more than aluminum in touring bicycles, because when you sit on a bicycle for maybe 6-8 hours a day and you ride that same bicycle day after day after day for days on end, you want a bicycle that's going to be comfortable. And so steel as a frame material in your bicycles is a much more comfortable material to be used. Now, titanium is very similar to steel. In fact, when you hear about a bicycle that's made out of titanium, it's almost never a bicycle made 100% out of titanium. That would be like incredibly expensive. But instead, usually when you see a titanium frame bicycle, it's a frame that is titanium mixed with steel. Now, both titanium frames and steel frames are comfortable, but titanium frames have the advantage that they are rust proof or more rust resistant than a frame that's made out of steel. So maybe if you've ever owned a bicycle that was made out of steel and you've like scratched the paint, you may have noticed that the bicycle starts to rust in that spot where the paint has been chipped away. And that's because steel does rust over time, especially if you don't care for it. Titanium, you're not going to have that same problem as much. The problem with titanium is it's really expensive. Most people aren't going to want to spend that much money on a bicycle. And 2, titanium is difficult to repair if something were to go wrong with your bicycle. So if you're planning like a bike tour in Africa, for example, and your frame were to crack out in the middle of Kenya or something like that, if you have a bicycle that's made out of titanium, it could be very difficult to find someone that's going to be able to know how to repair your bicycle. But if your bicycle is made out of steel and it gets a little crack in it, you can go to almost any welder out there and they're going to be able to repair your bicycle out on the road. And so that's why titanium is commonly not used in a lot of bicycles. It's in a lot of high-end bicycles, but you're going to see steel used in most touring bicycles in the world, simply because it's comfortable, it's relatively inexpensive, and it can be repaired pretty much anywhere in the world. So again, I talk about that inside my book, and I talk about that in my video course as well. Let's see, what other questions do we got here? Hey, Keith, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Frank said, oh, that was a question for someone else. He was saying, have you ever bike toured in Berlin? Yeah, I have been to Berlin twice, 2 times or so. So I read some of your questions, but I don't want to answer some of these. So there's several questions about on one of my latest Colorado videos. I was going up and over this Rawlings Pass, a 12,000-foot pass in Colorado, and on this particular day that I was going over the pass, I was running out of water. And just at the moment that I was like almost completely out of water, I discovered this a gallon jug of water sitting on the side of the trail, just out in the middle of nowhere. And this water jug has been the subject of so many emails and comments and messages. I just can't believe it. People wanted to know, why was that jug out there? And why did you drink the water without checking to see what it was? But to be completely honest, like, this is not the first time that I have seen water randomly out on a trail like that. I think it's actually somewhat of a common thing to see when you're in these remote areas. And I've seen these water jugs all around the world. Here in California, down by the Mexican border, in fact, if you go bike touring or camping out there, you will see giant, like 20-gallon, 50-gallon barrels of water out in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. And those water jugs are out there because people put them out there for the illegal aliens that are basically coming across the border and trying to get into the United States. They're coming from Mexico across the border into the US. And while some people don't want these people coming into America, they also don't want these people to be dying when they're making the trip across. And so there are people that go out and put these giant water jugs out in the middle of the desert, just in case some people come across the border, they're completely out of water, they're dying, and lo and behold, there is some water waiting for them. So it's the same kind of concept out here in the wilderness. I think that's what happened to me, at least in Colorado, was someone realized, maybe I should put some water up here in case someone gets thirsty when they're making their way over the pass. So I have seen water jugs like this in a lot of places, in Canada, in Europe, even in Africa. I've seen water just alongside the road in some places like that. So it wasn't totally uncommon for me to see it, but I realized that for some people, they thought, wow, that's incredible. I've never seen anything like that before. But yeah, the other thing was people were surprised that I just took a swig of water from that container without checking to see what it was. Some people thought maybe it was urine or something inside there, or gasoline or something. But I knew just from looking at it that it was clean water, and I could smell that it obviously wasn't urine or gasoline. So anyways, Frank says, Darren, are any of your videos in Berlin or Germany? Gosh, to be completely honest, I don't think so. I may have a couple videos from Germany, but not near Berlin. The truth is, I have been bicycle touring around the world since 2001. So it's been almost 20 years now that I have been bicycle touring around the world. But I only started making videos back in 2015. So the first 15 years of my bicycle touring experiences, I don't have videos from. So a lot of people have said, like, Darren, why do you only go bike touring in Europe? But the truth is, I don't just go bike touring in Europe. It's only in the last 3 years or so that I've done a lot of bike tours in Europe. And before that, I was in Africa and South America and Asia and North America. But I just don't have videos from all of those trips because I wasn't making videos at the time. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't have videos from my first couple trips. My first trip ever, actually, in Europe was in Germany. It was like a 2-month-long bike tour through Germany. I started in Frankfurt, Germany, went up to Cologne, across to Berlin, into Poland, and on from there. But yeah, sadly, I don't have any video from that trip. Let's see, what else? What other questions we got? Another question that was sent to me in advance was, what is the longest I've gone without seeing a store to buy food? The person was asking, do I need to carry about 2 weeks of food on my bicycle? And the answer generally is no. Unless you're going to Antarctica or something like that, you usually do not have to carry 2 weeks of food on your bicycle. In all of my 19 years of bicycle touring around the world, the longest I have ever gone carrying like a single supply of food with me. So like the longest the number of days I've gone without seeing a store of any kind was about 5 days. That's it, 5 days. So I was carrying, like, this was in the 2 instances that I can think of were in Africa and in Iceland, where I went 5 days without seeing a store of any kind. So I was carrying 5 days of food. I was probably carrying about 6 days of food, to be honest, because I knew that it was going to be about 5 days, maybe 6, before I got to the next place that I could refill my food supply. So I was carrying a little bit of extra food just in case it took me longer to get there. But in reality, it only took me about 5 days to reach the next place where I was going to get to a store. So the truth is, like, in most of my bike tours, it's only a couple days or maybe a day or two where I have to carry like food for 1 day, have to carry food for 2 days, and then I'm able to get more food. It's very, very rare that I go for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days without running into a store of any kind. And maybe if you're planning to go like bikepacking, like bikepacking is becoming more and more popular, where you're traveling off-road and going into more remote areas. In those particular scenarios, yes, maybe you would have to carry more than 5 days worth of food if you know that you're going into a remote area and you know that it's going to be several days before you come across a store. But for road-based bicycle touring, you're probably going to come across a store every couple days. And that has definitely been the case with me. Even in, you know, places in the world where you would think maybe there are no stores, in remote parts of Europe or South America or Africa even, there is almost always a store of some kind somewhere. If there is a road and if there are people, there is a store and there is food and water. That has been the case for me. Even like I'm thinking about the places I went in Africa that were crazy remote. You're out in the middle of nowhere. There's like, it looks like just sand and desert, and you come around a turn and there's a little hut there with a little girl or man inside, and they have, you know, 6 bottles of water, 2 things of Coca-Cola, and a little stash of food there. And it's not much, but it's enough to get by. It's enough to get you to the next store up the road. And yeah, so there's almost always like something out there. It just depends. Like me, I'm vegetarian, and it can be very hard to find food that I like and that's good for me when I'm out on the road. But there is generally food of some kind, no matter where you go in the world. Might not be good for you, but there will be food of some kind. I was in Lesotho. I remember it was like my first day in the country of Lesotho in South Africa, or Southern Africa, and I could not find water. I couldn't find just plain drinking water at any of the stores, and I was buying all my water because I didn't want to drink it out of the wells in the ground. It just didn't look clean. So I couldn't find water, but they had soda, like Coca-Cola. And I don't normally drink soda. Like, I never drink soda in my normal life at all. Maybe if I'm on the airplane and they're like, what kind of drink would you like? Sometimes I'll be like, oh, do you have a Sprite or something, a 7-Up? I don't know. And I'll drink that much soda. But the rest of my life, never drink soda. But anyways, I was in Lesotho, couldn't find any water, but they had Coca-Cola. So on this one day in Lesotho, it was like 100 degrees. I'm dying of thirst. And I was forced to essentially drink like 2 liters of Coca-Cola. And I was like shaking because I didn't know like I could consume this much sugar and caffeine in one day. It did not feel good, and I wouldn't recommend it. But the fact is, there was a store with something to hydrate myself with, and I didn't die from dehydration because of that store out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, anyways. Michael Hastings says, why do you never have breakdowns or maintenance issues? What spare parts do you carry? Well, there are a couple answers to that question. One, I do have breakdowns on occasion. If you've watched all of my bicycle touring videos, you will see that I have had a couple flat tires, but that's usually like some of the biggest breakdowns that I've ever had. When I was in, where was I? I was on the Isle of Man, which is like this little tiny island between Ireland and the United Kingdom. And I was bike touring there, and I was, there's a lot of really big mountains on the Isle of Man. And so I was going up these mountains, and at one point I cracked the rim on my rear wheel. The rim split completely apart. And I was able to continue riding on the bicycle, even though the rim was totally in half. And I got to a bike shop where I was able to get a new wheel. And in the end, it really wasn't any problem at all. Luckily, I didn't have to go very far on that broken wheel. But anyways, like that's one of the more serious breakdowns that I've had with my bicycle while I'm out on the road. And other than flat tires, at least that's the most serious thing that's happened to me. And the reason I've been able to avoid that is because, one, I watch where I'm going when I'm riding my bicycle, and I take extra care not to damage my bicycle. Two, I have a very good bicycle. Since 2012, I've been riding a CoMotion bicycle of some kind. I had the CoMotion Pangea, and now I'm riding the CoMotion Siskiyou touring bicycle. Both of these bikes are high-end touring bicycles, and they've basically been maintenance-free for me ever since I got them. That's part of why I like them so much, is like, this bike I can beat up, I can go and do anywhere, I can throw it on an airplane, throw it in a bus, throw it on a boat, and just hop back on and keep riding without any problems. I had other bicycles in the past, cheaper bicycles in the past, where I couldn't do this. I had to be more careful. The spokes would get bent and the derailleur would misalign and things like that. I just haven't had that problem once I've upgraded to a better bicycle. And now, 2019, I have this CoMotion Siskiyou touring bicycle, which is a very specialized bicycle that has a pinion gearbox on it. And I've talked about this in great detail before on my website. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to my website right now, bicycletouringpro.com, type in pinion, P-I-N-I-O-N, and just click enter in the search bar, and you'll see the information that I've put together on the pinion gearbox. It's basically an internal gearbox for your bicycle. So I have 18 gears that are built inside the frame of my bicycle. And so I don't have a metal chain or derailleurs on my bicycle to shift gears. Instead, I have what looks almost like a motor on the bottom of my bicycle. And all of the gears are inside the frame of my bicycle, so they can't be damaged in the same way that your metal chain and derailleur can on a more traditional bicycle. Like if you go up over a curb, for example, or you're jumping over a log on a regular bicycle, you can like totally damage or break off the derailleurs on your bike. That's not going to happen on my bicycle because I simply don't have those parts. And the pinion gearbox and the Gates carbon drive system, which is two pieces of technology that I have on my new bicycle, just make that bike, a high-end bicycle, even more maintenance-free than my other high-end bicycles, because there's basically very few moving parts that can get damaged or wear out. It's just incredible. So I highly encourage you to check out the pinion gearbox if you haven't done so already. This is a technology that I think is going to become more and more popular in the future, especially on touring bicycles, and especially as the price of these gearboxes come down and down and down as more and more of them are being produced. Okay, what other questions do we got? I hope that answered your question. I don't know if it did, but yes, David Williams saying the pinion looks amazing. Keith is saying, sorry I missed the start. How's Kevin? Enjoy your content. Well, I haven't talked to Kevin in a little while, although he actually just sent me a message this morning and was asking what my plans were, if I was going to come to Australia, and maybe we would do a bike trip together. So I need to answer Kevin pretty soon. And I also need to book some plane tickets here pretty soon as well. I'm not looking forward to the cost of buying a plane ticket to New Zealand or Australia, though, to be honest. I haven't looked at how much they are. Hopefully I can find a good one. Darren, love your videos. What is the total weight of your touring setup, bike and gear? This is another question that I've actually answered in great detail on my website. If you just go to bicycletouringpro.com and type in weight or what is the weight of your bicycle. But I actually weighed all three of my bicycles, and I have the exact weights there in that article. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. But what I can tell you is that when I am touring in the way that you see me, like on the back of this book, for example, with like these front bags and the rear bags and all this stuff on my bike, when I am touring in this way, my bike weighs close to like 90 pounds. Now that's 90 pounds with the bike, food, water, all of my camera equipment, clothing, camping gear, toiletries, etc. So that's 90 pounds with all of that. Now, if I was to be a normal bicycle tourist, I think I could get rid of quite a bit of weight because I wouldn't be carrying like a big tripod and a big DSLR camera and a drone and things like that. All of that stuff really weighs my bicycle down. So you're probably, if you're planning a bicycle tour like this, your bike should weigh much, much less than 90 pounds. It should be like 70 pounds or less. But one of the things, again, I talk about weight inside the Bicycle Touring Blueprint. And one of the things that I say is that, well, there are two things. One, your bike should never be so heavy that you can't lift it and carry it for a significant amount of time. And in the book, I talk about being able to lift and carry your bicycle up a flight of stairs. So you should be able to carry your bicycle up and down a flight of stairs. If you can't do that, your bike is probably too heavy. Also, if you're planning to fly with your bicycle, you have what is essentially a 50-pound weight limit when you are checking your bags onto a flight. So you check your bicycle in two different bags usually when you're flying on an airplane with your bicycle. The bike is one bag, and then all of your stuff is the second bag, right? So you have your tent and sleeping bag and sleeping pad and clothing and toiletries and all that stuff is in your second bag. Now that bag needs to be less than 50 pounds, otherwise you can't fly on the plane. And so that's kind of like your bike maybe weighs 30 pounds, and then the bike and then the baggage that you put on the bike weighs less than 50 pounds, right? Because otherwise you have too much stuff to fly on the airplane. So 30 pounds for your bike, plus hopefully like 40 pounds for your other gear. And so you can see the total there is about 70 pounds. Now, if you can get your other gear to be less than 40 pounds or less than 50 pounds, that's even better. But you're always going to be limited by that 50-pound weight limit. And I always recommend that you never go over that. I've seen some people check in 2 checked bags plus a bicycle to go off on a long distance bike tour. And that's just way too much stuff. Once you load all of that stuff on your bicycle, you're not going to be able to pedal. So yeah, that's my recommendation as far as weight is concerned. Michael says, what spare parts do you carry? That's another thing I talk about inside the Bicycle Touring Blueprint, but I'm not exactly sure about what you mean by spare parts. I think you mean like, do I carry a spare chain and things like that? And the answer generally is no. I carry almost no spare parts. So yeah, but I do talk about that inside the book. Yeah, Lazar says that's 90 pounds that's not in a backpack. Yeah, so obviously like when you're bicycle touring, the #1 rule of bicycle touring is that you don't carry things in a backpack. That's another thing I talk about inside the book. It's basically like rule #1 of bicycle touring or bike packing is that you never want to carry any weight on your body. Now, a lot of people, when they're first starting out with bicycle touring, they have this idea that like bike touring is similar to backpacking, and it is. Backpacking is where you put on a backpack, you carry everything you need for your trip in this backpack, and you walk a certain distance, and then you camp at night, and then you wake up the next day and you continue walking, and then you camp the next night and you continue walking. Bike touring is just like backpacking, except you're on a bicycle. But with bicycle touring, you never want to carry things on your back, because carrying things on your back is going to make you hot, sweaty, and sore. And I think another thing worth mentioning about a backpack is especially if you use like a big backpacking backpack, they oftentimes extend up above your head. And this is fine when you're hiking because you are fully erect. You're totally walking upright when you're hiking. But when you're cycling, you're leaning forward on your bike. And if you're wearing a backpack that extends up past your shoulders, that backpack is going to be preventing you from lifting your head and for you being able to see where you are going as you ride your bicycle. So normally when you're riding your bike, you're leaning forward and your head is back just a little bit. If you're wearing a backpack, you can't lift your head up. And this is going to just kill your neck as you ride, not to mention all of the weight and stuff that you're going to be putting on your body as you ride. So that's why inside my book, I talk about the various strategies for packing and carrying your gear on a long distance bike tour. And one of the most popular ways to carry your gear is with a set of pannier bags like you see here on this photo. These are called panniers. And they are small backpack-sized bags that attach to your bicycle. And you can carry 2 of them on the back of your bike. You can carry 4 of them like you see pictured here. There are different ways to pack. There are also bike packing setups, which are like smaller bags that attach to the frame of your bicycle. That's another way to pack. There are trailers that you can pull behind your bicycle. That's another way to pack. But the general rule with bicycle touring is that you never carry anything on your back. If you do have anything on your back, it's usually just a small hydration pack, which doesn't weigh very much, but is still going to make you hot and sweaty. It may not make you sore, but it will probably still make you hot and sweaty. So that's why I generally recommend people don't carry anything on their back if they can avoid it. The idea with bicycle touring and with bike packing is to put all of the weight of any of the items that you're carrying with you onto the frame of your bicycle rather than onto your body. Okay, I'm looking at other questions that were sent in. Okay, so this is from Tiran. Tiran is one of my Bicycle Touring Pro readers that I actually met in Ukraine this past winter. We just happened to be in the same city in Ukraine, and I met up with him. We went to a little zoo together for the day and had some dinner and coffee and stuff. And he is in Turkey right now. We met in Ukraine, and he's since ridden his bike to Turkey. But he wrote to me and said, Darren, excuse me, I'm gonna get some water here. Darren, I stopped in Riza, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name of the city, Riza, Turkey recently, and I just couldn't motivate myself to get back on the road again for ages. Do you ever find you just need a break or to slow down midway through one of your tours for a while? What's the longest you've ever had to stop on your bike trips? So that's a very good question. And again, this is something that I talk about inside the Bicycle Touring Blueprint. One of the things that I talk about inside the book are these various hurdles that you have to go over as a bicycle tourist. And there are 3 main hurdles that I talk about inside the book. There is the first 3-day hurdle. So usually during the first 3 days of a bike trip, those are the 3 hardest days on the entire trip. And if you can get past those first 3 days, usually you're able to continue the bike tour comfortably and settle in and start enjoying yourself. But for a lot of people, those first 3 days on the road are the hardest. And those first 3 days are usually, if somebody quits, they quit during the first 3 days. After that, there's this hurdle where, like, after about 2 weeks, some people kind of get bored and they're just like, okay, I've done the bike touring thing, I get it, and that's enough for me. And that's why most bicycle tours are 1 to 2 weeks in length. It's because not only is the 1 or 2 week length period ideal for most people who are working and they only get about 1 or 2 weeks off of work each year, but also most people have had enough of bicycle touring after about 1 or 2 weeks. So there's that. Then there's people like myself and like Tiran who are off on these long distance, month-long, year-long bicycle touring adventures going around the world. And what happens usually after, I call it about a month or 6 weeks, something like that, there's this third hurdle that occurs where you're out on the road, you're totally comfortable, you are at home on the road after 6 weeks on the road, but you can start to get bored if bicycle touring is the only thing that you are doing. And I think this is what's happening with Darren. He's been on the road for several months now, and he's just like, I don't really want to get back on my bike and keep riding again. And I know that this happens because it has happened to me. My longest bicycle tour that I ever did continuously without stopping was about 2 years. And I can tell you that at the end of that trip, I was exhausted and I was ready for a good darn break. You know, I'm ready to just sit in bed for about a month and do nothing. So yeah, I know that this happens, and it happens to pretty much every long distance bicycle traveler out there. The thing that I recommend if this happens to you is, one, do take a break. I think it's a good idea to take a break from the bicycle. But I also know that once you do take a break, it's harder to get started again. And so when I'm bicycle touring, like, I don't even like to take a 1-day break sometimes, because I know that it's going to be harder the following day to get started again. So like once I'm going, like a lot of people they cycle for 6 days and then they take 1 day off, and then they cycle for 6 days and they take 1 day off. I don't even like to do that sometimes, because I know that 1 day break is just going to make it harder for me to get going again the following day. But the same is true when you take a much longer break. If you're off your bike for 2 weeks, for example, and then you try to get back on, it is really hard to get back on your bike after that amount of time. It's kind of like someone who's never gone to the gym before and trying to get them started, running a marathon or something. Like, it's going to be almost impossible for them to get started. And the same is true when you're on a bike trip. Like, if you take a break for 1 week, 2 weeks, and then you start cycling again, it's almost feels like you're starting completely over again. So I just mentioned that the first 3 days of a bike tour are the hardest part of the entire bike tour. Now, if you take a break for 2 weeks and you start cycling again, you got to go through that 3-day period all over again. And that's the difficult part, I think. And that's probably what Darren is going through, is he knows somewhere in his brain that he's going to have to go through that 3-day hump again. And that's very hard to do. So my advice, I guess, is, one, do take the break if you need it. 2, know that you're going to have to get through that, first couple day hump again when you do get started. Getting started again is not going to be as easy, as your last day on the road. And then finally, try to find something about your bicycle tours that is more than just the cycling. This is something that I talk about actually all the time when people talk to me in person, or I'm consulting with individuals about how they can improve their time on the road. I'm always telling people, like, you've got to have something more than just the bike tour itself. Because after 6 weeks on the road or 6 months on the road, you're going to become bored. It doesn't matter what the scenery is like. If there's waterfalls and dancing girls, it doesn't matter. It's going to become boring after 6 months on the road. You got to have something else besides the cycling to entertain yourself with, or to keep your mind busy with. If you have something else, it's much easier to continue going. So like a lot of people, when they're doing these round the world bike trips, they are trying to learn a new language. That's like some other thing that they're interested in. They're reading books about topics. They're listening to podcasts that they're interested in. There's got to be something else. Maybe there's a theme to your bike trip. Like there's a couple here in the United States that was doing a bike trip focused around water. And all of their videos were talking about the lakes and the water systems and clean drinking water and where the water comes from and these sorts of things. So they had like a focus to their trip that was more than just the trip itself. It wasn't just cycling. Their goal wasn't just to cycle. It was to achieve these other goals outside of the bicycle as well. So that's what I would really recommend, is when you go off on a long trip, yeah, you're going to be challenged by the bike tour itself. But after about 6 weeks, the cycling becomes so easy that you have to have something else to challenge you and keep your brain entertained. I can't tell you what that thing is going to be for you, but you got to come up with something that's going to keep you motivated. Okay, I'm going back to the Q&A questions here. Ted says, what's the worst case experience of stealth camping gone wrong? Well, obviously, like I can think of some terrible things that could happen. You know, I just watched the movie Deliverance recently. Something like that could happen, but it's very unlikely. I have gone camping and I have gone stealth camping. Stealth camping is where you essentially camp in an area where maybe you're not supposed to be, and you camp overnight, and then you get out of that campsite in the morning before anybody discovers that you're in the campsite. And this is a perfectly legal thing to do in some parts of the world, and it is highly illegal in other parts of the world. And you have to do some research before you go off and do any stealth camping of your own. But I can tell you that I have spent years of my life stealth camping around the world, and I would consider myself a stealth camping expert. And in my 19 years of stealth camping around the world, I think I have been spotted in my campsite maybe one or two times. But the few times that I was spotted, the people that saw me were just like hikers or other bikers or something, and they were just like, hey, and they saw me, and that was the end of it. So me personally, I've never had anything bad happen to me when I'm stealth camping. I've never had like a farmer come up to me and be like, you can't camp here, I'm going to call the cops on you, or come at me with a gun or something like that. On one of my recent videos, I was in Colombia. I was camping at the top of a mountain, and I thought I was out there completely by myself. But as I was sitting there at my tent, I heard some noises coming up behind me, and I saw a guy with a gun, a big old rifle. He wasn't pointing it like I am now, but I'm just demonstrating. He had a gun, and he was with an older woman, and I realized this was like a son and his mom. And I think they were property owners or farmers or something in this area, and they were just out walking with their dog. And I think the gun was just their general protection. They weren't carrying it like because they were afraid of me or anything. They were farmers. But yeah, they came up to me, and I don't speak Spanish. Like I know 5 words of Spanish. And so I'm trying to explain to this guy like what I'm doing and why I'm camped out here, you know, but he understood, and he was totally cool. And it was not as scary as you might think it would be. But that is maybe the scariest incident that I've ever had with stealth camping. And in the end, it wasn't really all that scary at all. The only reason it was scary is the guy had a gun in his hand. But he wasn't pointing it at me, like I said. So, but yeah, the thing about stealth camping is when you are stealth camping, you are camping in such a way that you are taking extra effort to hide the fact that you are camping. Now, there's a difference between camping in a campground or just simply camping in the wild, where you are allowed to camp, and stealth camping, because stealth camping is this generally like somewhat illegal thing to do, where you are trying not to be discovered. And so if you're a good stealth camper, you are not ever going to be discovered. That's kind of like rule number 1 of stealth camping is don't set up your campsite in an area where you're going to be discovered. So that's my number 1 tip, I guess, for stealth camping is just don't get discovered in the first place, and then you won't have any problems. But if you're interested in learning more about stealth camping, I've got several really good articles about it on my website. Just go to bicycletouringpro.com, type in stealth camping in the search bar, and you'll see I have several articles there. I've also got a video about stealth camping here on the Bicycle Touring Pro YouTube channel. New question. Landon Ashby says, what things do you always bring with you versus buy when you get there? So yeah, there are certain things that you don't necessarily have to bring with you on a bicycle tour that you can always get you know, when you're out on the road. And the most obvious thing that you can buy out on the road are your toiletries. So I've gone off on some bike tours, like I went to Peru, I went to Europe one time. I just didn't bring any toiletries, and once I arrived, I got all the toiletries there. Same is true with clothing. You can, you know, when you're, especially when you're on a long distance bike tour, your clothing wears out, but you don't need to like ship new clothes from home or something. Like you don't need to bring a second pair of clothing with you. You can just buy new clothes out on the road. So that's another thing. I've been out on the road sometimes too for so long that like I need multiple haircuts over the course of a tour. And I've seen other bicycle tourists like bring hair cutting supplies with them on a trip. I think that's ridiculous because you can just go to a hair cutting place anywhere in the world and pay $5, $10 and get a haircut. Well, it depends on where you are in the world, of course. But yeah, and so like there are certain things that you just don't need to pack or bring with you, and there are certain things you need to buy out on the road. But that it is possible to go on a bike tour with almost nothing whatsoever. Like you could just go on a bike trip with no bike, no bike touring gear at all, just fly to a country like Norway, for example, and rent a bicycle there, and go off on a long distance bicycle tour and then return the bicycle to the rental company at the end of your trip. So that's something that other people do as well, is like they just go off on a trip with no bike, no gear. It saves them a lot of money. They don't have to buy a bike, don't have to buy all that gear, and they can just rent it for the week or two that they're out on the road and then return it and fly home without the hassle of like flying with a bike and all that sort of a thing. So that's another option if you're the type of person that maybe doesn't want to invest in an expensive bicycle and all the gear and stuff that you need to get started. It's a little bit hard to find places in the world where you can rent a full bicycle touring setup, but as bicycle touring is becoming more popular, there are places that you can do that. I know like in Portugal, Switzerland, Norway, these popular like tourist attraction places, there are businesses that cater to bicycle tourists where you can rent everything you need essentially for your bicycle tour. You just show up with the clothes that you need to ride in, some clothes to walk around in, and that's pretty much all you need. So yeah, it's really cool. Reading other questions that you got here. I'm laughing at some of your silly comments. Edvinas from Lithuania says, what about asking for someone to stay with them in their yard for a night when you are bike touring? So yeah, this is a strategy that you can use to find free places to stay when you're bicycle touring. What you need to do is you find somebody who's like out in front of their yard, getting the mail, watering their plants, playing with their kids, something like that. And you just ride up to them and you ask them for a free place to stay. I have done this dozens and dozens of times on my bicycle tours all around the world. It works very well in some parts of the world and it doesn't work at all in other parts of the world. So you have to do some experimentation to see if it'll work for you. I think it also works better probably if you're a woman or if you're traveling with a woman. It can be harder if you're a single man because I think people are less trusting of what you're doing. What you look like plays a big part in this. You know, people are judging you in that instance. You don't want to look like a homeless person. It is something that you can do. And like I said, I've done it a lot of times. Be prepared to be turned away because maybe 3 out of 4 people will turn you away, but the 4th person will be happy to have you in and let you have a shower and that sort of a thing. So that is a strategy that you can do. I would try it and see what happens. Like I've had some really good experiences actually where complete strangers invited me into their homes, or I kind of like asked if I could be invited into their home. And it turned out to be like an incredible thing. When I actually, like I mentioned that I'm going to Virginia soon, but back in 2003, I biked from North Carolina to Maine and I crossed through Virginia. And Virginia was one of my favorite states that I went through because I was using this particular strategy to find free places to stay on my travels at the time. I would just go up to people on the street and ask them if I could stay in their yard, essentially. The other strategy that I would use, and I've talked about this before, is that I would go up to somebody in their yard and I wouldn't say like, hey, can I sleep at your house? I would say, hi, I'm traveling on my bicycle and I'm looking for a place to stay tonight. Do you know of anywhere around here that I could stay? And 9 out of 10 times the person would say, yeah, I know where you could stay. You could stay right here. I got a big yard, or I got a big farm, I got a big garden, whatever, you can stay there. And so that was my strategy, is I didn't directly ask the person for a place to stay. Instead, I simply said, hi, I'm traveling, I'm on a budget or something. At the time, I was only 19 years old, so it made more sense. Like, I'm a poor college student, I have no money, and I need a place to take a shower and go to sleep. Can you help me? And so I would phrase it in that way, like, hey, I'm traveling, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm looking for a place to stay. Do you know of anywhere around here that can help me? And 9 out of 10 times they'd be like, yeah, I know where you could stay. You could stay right here. In order for this strategy to work, you need to find someone that obviously has a place to stay. This doesn't work well if, like, the person lives in an apartment complex and they're in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. It doesn't work if they're in a tiny little house with no yard. It works really well if the person has a big farm, an obvious yard. One time I stayed with a woman who had an RV parked on the side of her house. And she said, yeah, I know where you could stay, in my RV on the side of the house. You can come inside, take a shower, and then you have the entire RV to yourself. So I was like, sweet. And that worked really well, So yeah, this is definitely a strategy that you can use to find places to stay on your travels. Okay, I'm going to answer a few more questions here, guys. So if you have any more questions, now is the time to ask. William Schneider says, what is the Dr. Homebrew book on your website? So yeah, if you go to my personal website at darrenalff.com, you may see that I wrote a book called Dr. Homebrew. This book has nothing to do with bicycle touring. I don't have a copy of the book right here in front of me, but if you go to drhomebrew.com, you can also see the website there and order a copy of the book for yourself. But it's basically a fun fictional book that I wrote back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, or something like that. I was in Ukraine at the moment, and I had a friend that was interested in homebrewing beer. And I was talking to him about making a website about how to make beer. I don't know anything about beer, to be honest. I don't even drink beer. But my friend, who was really into beer, was the idea that we had was to make a website about how to make beer. We were going to teach people how to make beer. And I had the idea that we were going to come up with this character named Dr. Homebrew. And Dr. Homebrew was going to be the guy that would teach you how to make beer. So instead of like me teaching you how to bicycle tour, there was going to be this fictitious guy named Dr. Homebrew that would teach you how to make beer. So I wrote this entire book, and I illustrated all of the characters inside the book have drawings so that you can read this book, see who the characters are, and then like get immersed in this world of Dr. Homebrew, and then learn how to create your own beer and stuff. Anyways, I was working on this with a friend. I did everything on my side of the bargain. He did nothing on his side of the bargain. And so the website, Dr. Homebrew, with all of the how-to beer information, doesn't currently exist. But the fictional book that I promised that I would write does exist. The illustrations that I promised to create do exist. There are Dr. Homebrew posters that you can order. Those exist. And all of this, the idea for Dr. Homebrew was inspired by my travels in Ukraine. So if you look at my book, read the book and look at the illustrations, all of that, everything you see was inspired from my travels in Ukraine. I actually was bike touring in Ukraine at the moment that I wrote this book, and I took pictures of just random people on the street. And it was those photos of people and the way they dress and just their mannerisms and stuff is how I came up with this book called Dr. Homebrew. It's one of these random silly projects that I've worked on over the years that I've never really talked about and nobody knows about. I'm kind of surprised that you discovered it. But yeah, it's just a fun little thing that I did. It didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to because, like I said, my friend was supposed to help me with all of the how-to information, and because he didn't do anything, that never actually happened. But I did write a book, and if you want to read it, I think it's like one of the coolest things I've ever done. So check it out. Jean Ness says, when do you plan to retire? Are you talking about retiring from bicycle touring? I don't know, to be honest. in fact, like I think about retiring every single time I go on a bike trip because bike touring can be difficult. It's amazing and challenging and difficult all at the same time. And I guess that's why I keep going back to it too, is because like at the beginning of a bike tour, it's really, really hard. And during the middle of a bike tour, it's kind of a mix of like really difficult and really enjoyable all at the same time. But when you finish the bike trip and you look back at the experience, that's when you realize how amazing it was. And so I have been bike touring for 19 years, almost 20 years now. And next year will be my 20th year of bicycle touring around the world. It's pretty like crazy to even think about. But yeah, when do I plan to retire? I don't know, but I think about it a lot actually. But I'm continuing to do it now, largely because I've put in so much work to write this book, to create all the videos, to help other people learn how to bike tour. I do feel like this is one of my biggest missions in life, is to help other people learn how to do this, because I've gotten so much joy out of it personally. So I think now, like when I bike toured back at the beginning, when I was 17 years old, I was doing it 100% for myself, to prove that I could bike tour around the world, you know? And now I know that I can bike tour around the world. That's not a challenge for me personally. The challenge for me now is to get other people out on their bicycle tours. And so the mentality of my work has shifted, you know? The bike riding itself is very easy for me now. But what's harder is getting other people to learn about bike touring and to educate them so that they can go off and conduct their own bicycle tours. So that's why I wrote my books. That's why I did my website. That's why I make these videos, is to get people like you out on their own bicycle touring adventures. And if you're one of those people who has watched my videos, read my book, visited my website, and has gone off on a bicycle tour, please get in touch with me, because I know that thousands and thousands of people view my content on a daily basis. And many of those people go off and conduct their own bicycle touring adventures, but I never hear from them. So like there are thousands of people out there probably that have gone off on bike tours with my help, but I've never heard from you. Like you bought my book, you watched my videos, but I never hear from you after that. So if you've gone off on a bike tour, please email me, contact@bicycletouringpro.com. Send me an email. My name is Darren. Contact me an email, contact@bicycletouringpro.com. Send me an email. Preferably, just let me know where you went in the world, what you did, and how you enjoyed it. But preferably, send me a photo or even a short video of you out on your bicycle, so that I can add you to my list of Bicycle Touring Pro success stories. If you go to bicycletouringpro.com right now, up at the top in the menu, there's a menu item there called Success Stories. If you click on that, you will see the hundreds of people that have sent me photos or messages or videos saying that I have helped them in some way. So if someone sends me a photo of them out on a bike tour with a message saying, hey, I just got back from my bike tour in China or whatever, I add it to this page. And there are hundreds of people on that page, but I know that there are thousands of people missing from that page. So if you're one of those people who I've helped in some way, please get in touch with me. Send me an email with your photo or a video and let me know where you went in the world and how I helped you. I would really, really appreciate that. Okay, guys, I have been talking for almost an hour and a half straight. I'm starting to lose my voice. So I am going to go. I hope you enjoyed this. I want to do more of these in the future. I'm planning to do more of these in the future, but I am going to be on the road for the next couple months. So I don't know when the next live Q&A will be, but I just want to thank you again for tuning in. If you are one of those people who has not yet read my book, but you are in the process of preparing for your own bicycle touring adventures, I highly encourage you to pick this up. This is a 400-page book that will teach you pretty much everything you need to know in order to conduct your own bicycle tours. And if you order the book today, you can get it for $5 off. Plus, I will send you a signed copy of the book. So I'll sign the book and write a little special can't even talk, a special message inside the book for you. But you have to order the book today. You can get it at biketourbook.com. Enter the coupon code SIGNED. That's like, I want a signed copy of this book, and you'll get $5 off plus a signed copy. A link to the book is also in the video description down below. So just click that link. It's the second link in the video description down below. Okay, guys, that's it. I'm Darren Alff from bicycletouringpro.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to sharing my future bicycle touring videos with you. I have a new video coming next week and several more after that in the coming weeks as well. So stay tuned for those. Thank you once again for watching. If you are not a Bicycle Touring Pro YouTube subscriber, please click the subscribe button down below. Make sure you've hit the bell button next to the subscribe button so that you are alerted every time I publish a new video. I publish about 1 or 2 new videos per week. And like I said, I'm going to have some new videos coming up here soon that I look forward to sharing with you. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys once again for watching. Hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you out on the road sometime soon. Bye, guys. Hope you have a good one. Adios. Auf Wiedersehen. Do widzenia. And goodbye.